The second I saw that name card, my stomach twisted. It was thick ivory stock, the kind you'd see at a senator's fundraiser. Before we go any further, if my story has found you, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to see just how far my words can travel. My name was written out in pretty calligraphy, but right underneath, in a sharper hand, someone had scrawled Daniel, father by obligation. That cut deeper than I expected. 19 years. I raised Emma alone after her mom left when she was just 5 months old. Diapers, night shifts, fevers, school pickups, scraped knees, juggling part-time jobs, taking every bit of overtime I could. It was me. Always me. And now here I was, dropped into a linen-covered chair at some fancy event center on the edge of Lake Michigan, surrounded by people who'd never be caught dead driving the beat-up truck I left out back. The family table was full of strangers. Polished suits, manicured hands, little sideways glances that made it clear I didn't belong. Some woman from the groom's side, maybe his aunt, glanced at my shoes and whispered something to her husband. They both chuckled. A guy in one of those tech bro vests didn't even bother to hide his smirk when he noticed me staring too long at that name card. It felt like I'd walked into a country club costume party, only no one told me it wasn't Halloween. A younger guy, 2 seats down, actually snorted. Guess they really had to invite the janitor, he muttered, not realizing I could hear. I didn't answer. I just stood, slid the chair back slow. I didn't need a scene. I didn't want to figure out who wrote it or how many of these smug faces thought I was just some tag-along, a pity invite. I just wanted out. Across the room, Emma stood with her new in-laws. She looked beautiful. White silk dress, hair curled in soft waves, smiling like everything in the world was perfect. They were raising glasses, laughing. Maybe nothing was wrong. Maybe I was the one who didn't fit anymore. Maybe my chapter was already over and I just hadn't turned the page. So I turned around. I didn't even say goodbye. I wasn't about to cry in front of them, give them that satisfaction. Then the music cut. The mic crackled. The whole room went silent like someone killed the power. I turned back and there was Emma standing in the middle of the dance floor. She had her heels off, gripping her fiancé's hand, not gently either. "I'm done," she said into the mic, voice steady. "We're leaving." At first people laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. But it wasn't. She dropped his hand, stepped off the floor and walked straight toward me. The DJ just froze with his laptop clutched like it might blow up. The groom blinked like someone had slapped him awake. Emma grabbed my arm. "Let's go," she said. "We're not staying." I didn't move. "Emma, what the hell?" "I'll explain in the car." So we left. She led the way, her dress dragging through flower petals and spilled champagne. We walked right through that fancy venue, past shocked guests and whispering bridesmaids. Nobody stopped her. She didn't look back. Neither did I. We drove for 40 minutes without saying a word. Just the sound of the road, her bare feet tapping the pedals, the rustle of her dress every time she shifted. Her makeup was still perfect, barely smudged, but her jaw stayed tight like she was holding words inside her teeth. The wedding playlist kept looping from her phone, still hooked to the car speakers. I reached over and shut it off. She didn't argue. Neither did I. She took the exit for Dallas without even glancing at a map. My place isn't anything fancy, just a one-story with a busted fence and faded paint. But the mortgage is paid and I've kept the lights on ever since she left for college. It's home. She pulled up to the curb and sat there a moment, her hands gripping the wheel like she was bracing for impact. Finally she let out a long breath. "I saw the card before you did," she said, staring straight ahead. "Last night at the rehearsal dinner. It was already sitting on the table." I just stared at her. "And you still let today happen?" "I had to be sure," she answered. "I needed to see if they'd actually go through with it. And they did." She reached into her small purse, pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. "Watch." She held it between us, hit play. The audio came through crisp, too crisp. The groom's dad, Robert Lawson, stood at the bar, tie loose, holding a glass of scotch. I mean, the guy's basically a glorified handyman, right? I looked up his house on Google Maps. It's barely above Section 8. Someone off camera laughed. Then the groom's mom chimed in. "Don't be mean. He's a janitor, not a handyman. Let's give him the proper title." More laughter. Then the camera panned and I saw Tyler, her fiancé, standing there with a grin. Can't wait to see her face when she realizes she could have had her real dad walk her down the aisle. You know, the one who didn't mop floors for a living. The video ended. My heart didn't. I leaned back, staring out at the dark street. All I could think was, they knew. The whole damn family knew. And they smiled right in my face. Her real dad, I muttered. That bastard bailed before she even had teeth. Emma turned to me, her face blank but her voice steady. I told them he was gone. I told them who raised me. They didn't care. Why didn't you tell me this before today? I asked. My voice cracked and I hated it. I could have stayed home. She shook her head. Because this wasn't just about me or you. It was about seeing people for who they really are. I needed proof. I looked at her. So, you married him just to catch them slipping? I didn't marry him. She opened the glove box, pulled out a folded manila envelope and dropped it on my lap. Never signed the prenup. I had my own legal team review it, revise it and send back a counter. They ignored it. So it's invalid. I opened the envelope. Inside was a thick packet of documents. Legal filings, notarized letters, stamped and airtight, all in her name. You had a lawyer? I've had a lawyer since February, she said. Family counsel. Confidential. I shook my head. How long have you been planning this? She gave me a look like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. Since I started building something worth protecting. I frowned. What do you mean? She pulled her phone back out, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward me again. This time it was a slick, professional website. Her face on the homepage. Horizon Biotech. Predictive diagnostics for preventative care. That's your company? I'm co-founder, she said. We're Series C now. Valuations around 80 million. I blinked. You never told me. He shrugged. Didn't want to jinx it. And I didn't want anyone thinking I got here because of them. I sat there holding her phone like it might burn through my hand. My daughter, the kid who once built robots out of toaster parts, had become the kind of person investors lined up to meet. And I'd had no clue. She slipped her phone back into her bag and said, they thought they were marrying up. I turned to her. And you let them believe that? Damn right I did. She pushed open the car door and stepped out barefoot onto the gravel. I followed. Inside the house smelled like old leather and dust. She dropped her shoes by the door the way she always used to, then headed straight for the kitchen. Without hesitation she grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, popped the tops and slid one across the table toward me like no time had passed. And just like that I realized she never really left. Emma sat down, peeled the label off her bottle like she was killing time, but her eyes told a different story. Sharp, steady like a storm waiting offshore, just looking for an excuse to roll in. She took a sip, then reached into her overnight bag and pulled out another manila folder. This one was heavier, thicker. She dropped it onto the table. It landed with a flat thud. Open it. I raised an eyebrow but did what she said. Inside were stock certificates, contracts, purchase records. Every single one stamped and signed. The first name that popped up was Silver Creek Holdings. The rest were filed under the same umbrella. What is this? I asked. She leaned in, elbows on the table. That's my trust. I've been buying into Lawson Medical Logistics since last year. I froze. You bought stock in Tyler's family business? No, she said flatly. I bought control. My mouth went dry. How much? 37% as of last week. I looked back at the stack of documents. They were airtight, funneled through holding companies in Nevada and Delaware, the kind of setup people with real money use when they don't want to be seen. That's how they didn't spot you, I muttered. She gave one short nod. They thought I was just some biotech nerd who'd fold into their world. They didn't realize I already had my own. She took another sip before adding, I used dividend payouts from Horizon, plus the inheritance grandma left me. You remember when I asked for help opening that trust account 2 years ago? Yeah. That's when it started. I pushed the papers back slightly, leaned against the chair. You've been sitting on this the whole engagement? I wasn't sitting, she said. I was digging. From her bag she pulled a sleek black leather folder, the kind execs bring into courtrooms. Inside were spreadsheets, internal emails, red-marked reports. She spread them across the table one by one. Here's their inventory report. They claimed a 20,000-unit loss last quarter. Actual numbers closer to 70. Here's the vendor list. Check out this one, Northwind Supplies. They've been overcharging Lawson by 15%. And guess who owns it? Tyler's uncle. Here's their FDA compliance report, falsified. I had it re-audited by an independent agency. I stared at the papers. I might not have a degree, but I know the stench of a cover-up. This wasn't just sloppy, it was rotten. She slid another sheet toward me. They're not just corrupt. They're reckless. Once this goes public, they'll be radioactive. I shook my head. Emma, this is war. Exactly. She pulled 3 more documents from the folder. Signed proxy agreements. 2 from minority shareholders and 1 from a board director named Susan Parker. Together they held about 12%. They're sick of the Lawsons treating the company like their personal playground. I've been working on this for months. Susan promised to back me fully if I could reach quorum. I squinted down at the signatures, trying to process what my daughter had just laid out. So, with their backing, I can call an emergency executive vote and win. I stared at her. And what do you need me for? That's when she pulled out one last sheet of paper. Shorter. Simpler. A proxy authorization form. I'm transferring my vote to you. I froze. What? I'll still be the stakeholder, but you'll hold the voting rights, for now. Optics. They can't say I'm just a bitter ex. But if they have to answer to you, the man they mocked, they'll choke on it. I looked at the page, then back at her. Why me, Emma? You built this whole plan. You should finish it. I will, she said. But this part's yours. She leaned closer, eyes steady. They insulted the man who kept the lights on with double shifts. The man who ate leftover spaghetti so I could buy robotics kits. They whispered about him in country clubs. No. He's going to sit at the head of their board table. My hands trembled against the wood. Not from fear. From something older. Pride maybe. But you really want me in that chair? I want you leading it. You sure about this? She smiled. Not like my daughter. Like a general handing off orders. I've never been more sure of anything. So I picked up the pen. I signed. She closed the folder, tucked it back into her bag like it was no big deal. Meeting's Thursday, she said. Be ready. And wear a real suit this time. I don't own a real suit. You will. She drained the last of her beer, tossed the empty bottle into the sink with a clean clank, then headed for the spare bedroom like it was still hers. Like she was just home from college for the weekend. I stayed there, palms flat on the table, papers spread out in front of me, realizing how far she'd gone to protect me. Not with tears. Not with hugs. The leverage. My little girl didn't come back to be saved. He came back with a plan to burn their house down. Thursday morning she tossed me a charcoal gray suit still wrapped in plastic. Tailored, she said. You'll thank me later. Felt stiff, too clean. I'd never worn anything like it. I was used to canvas pants and steel-toe boots. But I put it on. Buttoned it up. Slipped into the leather shoes she'd left by the door. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a janitor. I saw someone they'd regret underestimating. We walked into Lawson Medical's headquarters at 9:04 a.m., 4 minutes after the board meeting had started. Emma didn't knock. She pushed through the frosted glass doors like she owned the place. Inside, 12 heads turned at once. Long mahogany table, crystal pitchers, notepads lined up like it was some slick product launch. Robert Lawson sat at the head in a navy suit that probably cost more than my first car. The second he saw us, he shot to his feet. You're not allowed in here, he barked. Emma didn't flinch. Read the bylaws. This is a closed executive session. I'm an executive, she cut in. And so is my proxy. He pointed at me. He looked like he'd swallowed a nail. You're bluffing. Calm as ever, she opened her briefcase and slid out one crisp document. Filed Monday. Verified by the corporate secretary. You were copied. She laid it in front of him. State seal, official stamp. Legal transfer of proxy authority. My name bold at the top. Near the end of the table, someone cleared their throat. One of the board members, middle-aged woman, silver necklace, sharp eyes, flipped through her own agenda. It's valid, Robert. I saw it come through. He sat down hard, jaw tight. Emma faced the room. I'd like to submit new business. Emergency item. Call for executive vote. Agenda item. Breach of compliance protocol, financial misconduct and negligent governance. Half the table stiffened. Robert gave a sharp, bitter laugh. You think you can just walk in here and stage a coup? Emma didn't raise her voice. I don't think. I know. She stepped forward, opened her folder and handed out copies of the flagged documents like a teacher passing out pop quizzes. No speech, just facts. Vendor fraud through Northwind Supplies tied to your brother. Overbilling by 1.3 million in the last year. Internal losses misstated in quarterly reports. Falsified FDA documents filed last October to push through a warehouse expansion. Pages rustled. One man rubbed his temples. Someone whispered, Jesus Christ. This is baseless, Robert snapped. Then prove it, Emma shot back. Vote to audit. He stood again, red-faced. This company has been in our family for 50 years. We built it from nothing. No, she said steady. Your legacy ended the second you started funneling fake invoices through shell vendors. You didn't build this. You gutted it. His son Tyler finally spoke, voice low. And, come on. This doesn't have to get ugly. She turned, eyes like ice. You already made it ugly. The room went dead quiet. Emma drew a breath, then nodded toward me. My proxy, Daniel Carter, is prepared to call the vote. Along with shareholders Susan Parker, Joseph Nunez and Kimberly Rice. Susan, the sharp-eyed woman from earlier, raised her hand. Confirmed. Joseph and Kimberly followed. That put us at 53%. Robert's face strained. He glanced at his brother and his nephew. Neither moved. I moved to remove Robert Lawson, Walter Lawson and Tyler Lawson from executive authority effective immediately, Emma said. I pushed my chair back and stood. I second. Susan took over. All in favor? Hands rose. 5, 6, 7, 8. Enough. Motion carries. Robert's voice cracked. You can't do this. Emma leaned across the table, calm as stone. You handed me your trust. I used it. You handed me your arrogance. I weaponized it. Robert collapsed back into his chair, stunned. Tyler just stared at the table like if he didn't look up, maybe it wasn't happening. Then Susan stood. Final order of business. Interim board chair appointment. Candidate, Daniel Carter. I froze. Emma gave me a single nod. Sand. I did. Votes? Susan asked. The same 8 hands rose. Motion passed. Congratulations, Chair Carter. The room tilted just for a second, but I steadied myself. No smile. No words. Just a nod before I sat back down. Robert shoved his chair back and stormed out. Walter followed. Tyler hesitated. Emma caught his eye. This was never about love. He blinked. What? She slung her bag over her shoulder. It was about legacy. We walked out. No victory parade. No applause. Just the sound of heels on tile and the heavy door swinging shut behind us. In the lobby, Emma finally exhaled. Her shoulders dropped for the first time all day. I kept quiet. She looked over at me and grinned. Nice suit. Nice takedown. We stepped out into the sun. In the parking lot, I squinted up at the sky and thought, what the hell just happened? 3 weeks ago I still had grease under my nails. Now I was board chair of a multi-million-dollar company I hadn't even known I was walking toward. Emma popped the trunk and tossed in her briefcase like it was nothing, like this was just a Tuesday. We climbed in the car and sat quiet for a minute. The engine purred, the air conditioning clicked on. I leaned back, staring out the window. You okay? She asked. Yeah. Just trying to wrap my head around it. She gave a quick laugh under her breath. I've been planning this for years. You jumped in 3 days ago and handled it like a pro. I didn't feel like a pro. I felt like the guy who once changed his shirt in a gas station bathroom between shifts because being 5 minutes late wasn't an option. You know what I kept thinking in there? I asked. While they were all sitting around that table, I kept seeing myself back in the garage, wiping oil off my hands with a shop towel I'd used all week. Day shifts at the body shop, come home, heat up leftovers, then clock in for nights cleaning floors at the mall. Did that for years. Sometimes I'd fall asleep standing in the supply closet. I missed your 2nd grade recital because I was mopping puke off the food court tile. She reached over, rested her hand on mine. Nothing soft about it. Just solid. You did what you had to, she said. I nodded. I didn't even know if you noticed. Her eyes locked on mine. Voice firm. I noticed everything. And I believed her. We pulled into the driveway a little past noon. The sun was brutal. I shrugged off the blazer and slung it over my shoulder. Emma headed straight to the kitchen, poured 2 tall glasses of lemonade like she hadn't just staged a hostile boardroom takeover. I sat at the same table as before. Same chair, same house. But the world felt different. She set the glass in front of me, then slid a slim legal-sized envelope across the table. "What now?" I asked. "This," she said, uncapping a pen, "is the final paperwork for the trust transfer. It moves Lawson Medical into a public equity fund with healthcare access clauses. We'll keep a majority stake under the nonprofit wing, but it shuts down personal profiteering. You and me," she tapped the page. "We're the final co-signers." I opened the folder. Title across the top, Carter Health Equity Public Trust. Her name listed as founder. Mine as interim chair. "You sure you want to do this?" I asked. "Yeah. This was never about revenge, Dad. It was about flipping the system that tried to swallow us." I looked at her, and for a second all I saw was the little girl in overalls who used to sit under the shop counter, eating crackers while I pulled apart brake lines. "You remember prom night?" I asked. "Your zipper broke, you were panicking upstairs, and I was outside fixing a stranger's radiator. I was 15 minutes late, but I still made it for pictures. Never charged that guy a dime. Didn't even get his name. Just knew his car was smoking and his kid was crying in the back seat." She laughed. "I remember. And I remember thinking, one day I'm going to fix things for him too." I blinked fast, looked down. She reached under the table, pulled out a small black garment bag, unzipped it just enough to show the edge of another suit. Lighter gray, finer material, slim cut. "That's for the next meeting. Custom fit." I tried to wave her off. "I'm not going to live in suits, Emma." She set the garment bag over the back of my chair. "You're not standing behind me anymore," she said quietly. "You're standing beside me." I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My throat locked up and my eyes went hot. I pressed a knuckle to the corner of one eye like there was something in it, even though we both knew there wasn't. She didn't push. She just let me sit with it. A few minutes later we sat side by side and signed the last of the trust paperwork. No lawyer in the room, no notary at the table. Just us and a witness on Zoom who barely said 3 words. When the final e-signature blinked green, I leaned back and stared at the screen. It was done. We just handed the Lawson Empire into a trust that would actually mean something. Medical access, compliance, transparency. And for once I didn't feel like I'd stolen something. I felt like we'd reclaimed it. 2 weeks later the knock came a little after 11. I was on the couch, half asleep, watching a rerun of some car restoration show with a ginger ale in hand. The knock wasn't loud but firm. Too steady for a neighbor, too unsure for a cop. I opened the door in sweatpants and a faded t-shirt. Tyler stood there. His shirt wrinkled, tie crooked, hair a mess. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Eyes bloodshot, jaw scruffy, hands twitching like he didn't know where to put them. "Mr. Carter," he said softly. "Please. I just need 5 minutes. I need to talk to Emma." I leaned into the doorframe, arms crossed. "You called me a prop. And now you're standing on my porch begging for mercy." His face twisted. "It wasn't like that. I didn't mean it. I was drunk, I was trying to save face." "That's all you ever did," I cut in. He tried again, but I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door mostly shut behind me, blocking his view inside. "Let me guess," I said. "Your dad's frozen out. The board voted in an outsider. Family name circling the drain. And now you're here with your tail tucked, hoping Emma's got a patch kit." His shoulders sagged. "I didn't know she'd actually go through with it." "That's your problem," I said. "You never thought she could go through with anything. You thought she needed you." He glanced past me toward the door. "Can I at least talk to her?" I didn't answer. Behind me I heard light footsteps on the hardwood. Emma's voice was calm. "It's okay." I stepped aside. She came out barefoot, leggings and a hoodie, hair pulled back. No makeup, no performance. Just her. Tyler took a half step forward, then stopped. He stayed close to me, arms crossed. Her eyes were sharp, not angry, just tired. The kind of tired that comes when you're finished carrying other people's weight. "You don't get to spin this," she said. "Not here. Not now." He nodded quickly. I know. I panicked. "My dad's blaming me. Says I should have stopped you. Says I embarrassed the family." "Your dad embarrassed himself," she said flatly. "You just followed his lead." He swallowed hard. "I didn't sign off on that card. I swear. But you didn't speak up either. I thought it was a joke, a bad one. You laughed, she cut him off. You stood there laughing while your mom called me the janitor's daughter, and your dad called mine a handyman charity case. You could have stopped it. You didn't. His hand shook as he reached into his jacket, pulling out a wrinkled piece of paper. I wrote something. I know it won't fix anything, but... I don't want an apology, Emma said. I want space. She slipped a white envelope from the pocket of her hoodie and held it out. He didn't take it right away. What is it? He asked. Cease and desist, she said. It covers personal contact, professional involvement, and any attempt to interfere with the business transition. He stared at it like it was glowing radioactive. You're serving me? No, she said. I'm protecting myself and my company. This isn't personal. It's structural. Finally he took it, hands trembling. I thought we had something real. Emma tilted her head. I did too. Until I realized the only thing real between us was your need to be rescued. He flinched. You've always needed someone to save you from yourself, she said softly. I just stopped applying for the job. He looked like he might cry, but nothing came. Just that stunned silence men get when they finally see the wreckage they built, and realize no one's coming to clear it for them. He stepped back down the porch stairs. No goodbye, no second try. The letter hung limp in his hand as he crossed the sidewalk and climbed into a silver car that looked way too polished for someone just cut out of his family's empire. He drove off without headlights, like that would help him disappear. Emma didn't say a word until the taillights were gone. Then she turned and walked back inside. I followed. In the kitchen she poured herself a glass of water. Her hands steady. Her jaw tight. You good? I asked. She nodded. He always talked like he was planning our future. But it was really just his. I leaned against the counter. You did the right thing. She took a slow sip. I know. You want to talk about it? Nope. And that was that. She went to bed. I stayed in the kitchen staring at the other envelope, not hers, his. The one he tried to hand her like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Folded too many times, like he couldn't decide if he had the guts to give it to her. I dropped it in the trash where it belonged. A week later, Emma and I stood under a rented pop-up tent in the middle of Oak Ridge Park, just 3 blocks from the old duplex where I once stretched $30 between groceries and gas. The place was full. Kids running, families with strollers, a few elderly folks from the assisted living home down the street. Behind us hung a big blue banner. Carter Health Access Fund, Affordable Care, Real Equity. 2 folding tables were stacked with refurbished glucose monitors, blood pressure cuffs, and preloaded tablets with health literacy software. All of it paid for by the new nonprofit wing of Lawson's empire. Our arm now. We'd carved the first slice straight out of Q2 dividends, no hesitation, and poured it right into supplies for clinics in neighborhoods like this. Places where people knew how to survive but rarely had the tools to thrive. Emma stepped up to the mic first. White blouse, sleeves rolled, sunglasses pushed onto her head like she was born to stand there. And she was. Today isn't about headlines or handouts, she said, voice carrying across the park. It's about closing gaps that should never have existed in the first place. A few people clapped. Heads nodded. Even the teenagers at the basketball court stopped dribbling to listen. She kept it short, she always knew how to land clean. And before any of this could happen, she went on, there was someone who worked 3 shifts to keep the lights on. Someone who taught me that showing up matters more than any title. Then she turned and pointed at me. This is the man who made all of this possible. My stomach flipped. I wasn't built for that kind of spotlight, but I stepped up anyway. The mic felt too small in my hand, my voice too big at first, then not big enough. I cleared my throat. I don't know much about business, I said. Still don't, to be honest. I can't run spreadsheets, and I sure as hell don't speak in acronyms. I got a few laughs. But I do know how to show up. Every single day. I know how to do what needs doing. And I guess, sometimes that's enough to build something that matters. I kept it short and got off the mic before I made it weird. The applause wasn't polite. It was real. Afterward, 3 teens came up to me, 17 maybe younger. One girl, buzz cut under her hoodie that said future engineer, looked me straight in the eye. I've never seen someone like me at a board table before, she said. I didn't have the right words, so I just nodded. Another kid asked if he could take a picture. I said sure. He pulled out a beat-up Android phone with a cracked screen. Felt right. That afternoon, a local Channel 8 crew aired a segment titled Mechanic Dad Turns Corporate Chair. They spelled my name wrong on the graphic, but I didn't care. I watched it from a folding chair outside the rec center while Emma gave her interview. Calm, collected, professional, but still herself. Always herself. When the last table got packed up and the volunteers drove away, it was just the two of us left under the shade. Emma sat beside me, handed me a small white envelope and said nothing. I opened it. Inside was a single key and a folded deed. Property title. Full transfer. Both our names on it. I looked at her. What's this? New house, she said. 3-bedroom. Corner lot. Not far from here. My throat tightened. Emma. Not repayment, she cut in. Just an upgrade. For both of us. The key felt heavy in my hand, heavier than it should. Are we moving? I asked. He shrugged. We don't have to. But it's there if we want it. I nodded, still working to swallow whatever was caught in my chest. We sat a while longer, just listening to the wind and the occasional car rolling past. No rush. No big speech. Just two people who'd spent a long time building something from the ground up finally standing still. And it felt earned. 1 year later, I sat in the front row of a polished auditorium at the University of Michigan. Dark tailored coat, shoes that finally matched. The stage lights were bright, bouncing off the glass walls, catching rows of business students scribbling notes like their lives depended on it. Emma stood at the podium in a navy blazer, hair pulled back. No flash. Just authority. She didn't pace. Didn't overperform. She held the room with calm presence, the same way she handled that boardroom. The same way she walked into the fire a year ago and never blinked. Her keynote was titled Strategic Patience. Winning by Watching. She spoke about timing, leverage, controlling narratives. All the things I never had names for but had learned to survive by instinct. The audience leaned in with every word, hanging on her like she'd invented the idea of waiting for the right moment to strike. During Q&A, a student stood up and asked, "Who influenced your approach the most when you were starting out?" He didn't hesitate. "I learned business from a man who never went to college," she said. "But he taught me cost, value, and return better than any textbook." Her hand lifted just slightly and her eyes found mine. The room broke into applause. Some of the students even turned in their seats to get a look at me. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just nodded, hands folded in my lap, still as stone. Afterward, I slipped out the side doors while Emma got pulled into a storm of professors and program heads, each one waving business cards and offering coffee meetings. I figured she'd catch up later. The valet stand outside was busy. Students with startup dreams dropping off Toyotas that hadn't seen a car wash in weeks. I walked right past the kid working the stand. Same kid who, a year ago at the wedding, had laughed when I pulled up in my rusted-out truck. He didn't recognize me now. Not in this coat. Not in these shoes. He glanced once and said, "Nice ride, sir." Like I belonged. I slipped him a 5. "Thanks," I said without breaking stride. The town car was already idling by the curb. Emma sat inside, finishing a bottle of water, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I climbed in. "You crushed it," I told her. "I know," she said, then smiled. "But thanks." We pulled away from the curb, sliding into campus traffic. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then I turned slightly, looked out the tinted glass and said, "You didn't have to do all this." She didn't look at me when she answered. "You're right. I didn't. I wanted to." We passed the edge of campus, stopped at a red light. That's when I saw it. A billboard above the gas station where we used to scrape together quarters for fuel. Big white letters on a navy background. Integrity is inherited. Carter Health Equity Fund. No flashy logo. No design tricks. Just words. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. Not revenge. Resolution. That's what it felt like. And if my story stayed with you, tap that like button and subscribe.